also find several suggestions what you can do within the campaign. And what's very important, you will find there activities for students. So even if you are not a member of the campaign, you can here download the activities and learn what actually goes on, what's happening in the campaign. These activities are based on the GLOBE protocols, and they will guide you like step by step through the autumn observation, and also through the work with autumn or green down data, with the work with the GLOBE database and GLOBE visualization tool. So really, even if you are not from the Europe and Eurasia region, feel free to come here and see the activities and use them. Important part of the campaign is also the collaboration group, which brings together schools usually from different countries, and these schools work together in smaller groups of like 2 or 4 schools. They exchange results, pictures, or they plan some research projects together. It's very nice. We have now 80 schools working together from the Europe and Eurasia region. Okay, so this is a little bit about the campaign. Also, one more thing I would like to emphasize on the website is the webinar tab, where you will. Okay, yeah, it should be visible now. We organize several webinars this autumn, and you will always hear in this tab you will find invitation and possibility to register. I would like to invite you to one more webinar, which is will be held next week and is organized by Brian Campbell's team of Trees Around the Globe campaign. You will also find here webinars that have been held in the past, so you can see recordings and presentations from the webinars. Okay, and this is enough from me talking about the campaign, and now I will give a short word to GLOBE students and show you a very short video, 1-minute video, where the GLOBE students describe how they observe their trees in spring. So hopefully you will hear it well and see it well.
Hi, I'm Dominic, and this is Oliver, and we are from Zuzana from the Czech Republic. Our school participates in a spring observation program by the Globe that brings young people to protect the environment. This is our tree that we picked to observe. It's beach, and we picked it because it's in our school, so we can easily keep an eye on it. And this is our lime tree. We actually picked one more lime tree because we found it interesting that it evolves much slower than this one. We definitely learned some new skills during the project. We measured the buds and leaves and now learn more about trees in spring. We also enjoyed to observe the leaves unfold and grow, and it was just a great and beautiful experience to walk with floats.
Okay, so there was also some funny part of the video, but I will save time and come back to our presentations. So yeah, I want to say that this is the core of a campaign, to go outside, observe the trees, and understand that there is a nature around us, and that trees are kind of living organisms, and measure how they change in spring. And so this is the core. Don't worry if you are not part of a campaign yet, or you are not observing the tree changes. Don't worry, go ahead and join. But in today's webinar, we aim to bring you a little bit extra information so that you understand more about the seasonal changes. And I will give word now to Zuzana Lhotakova from the Charles University, who will talk about the processes in trees.
Well, can you hear me? Because
yes.
Sorry, I have some connection problems?
Yes, we can hear you. And the only thing is that I can see you twice in the list of participants. So there was some echo.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you are connected through two devices. I think it would be better to just switch off one of them, or.
Okay, Bara, I will try.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry for this.
It's okay.
Problems.
It's okay. It always happens. So just take your time to arrange that.
Okay, I suppose now I should be here only once.
Yeah, I think now it's perfect. Yeah.
Is it okay, Bara, now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can still see one more Zuzana Lhotakova, but I can remove that from our. Okay. Fine. I think now it's okay.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so please
Fine.
go ahead.
Now I can try to share the screen. So welcome everybody this afternoon for the Phenology webinar. So thank my colleagues from Globe for introducing me. So now I will start with my presentation, and we will focus on how the trees, how the trees behave in the fall. So, well, as girls told already, I'm from the Charles University in Prague, Czech Republic, and for this presentation, I will use the data that we collected with our colleagues in floodplain forest in South Moravia, and as well the data from other scientists who work on the similar topic. So I thank Lenka to give me a nice title which contain two main questions. The first one is what triggers trees to lose their leaves, why they do it. And the second one is why and how do leaves change color and then fall off. So let's start with a reminding of something that everybody who goes to the forest or even pass the street and the urban trees can see that in the spring the trees emerge the leaves, and that the leaves get bigger and greener, and then they are full green and nice during the summer, and in September, October, it depends, they start to change their colors from green to yellow, purple or orange, and then they fall. So that's something that we experience every year. Or, well, we who are living on the northern or southern hemisphere with latitude more than 30 degrees. Of course, that the trees behave little bit differently at the equator, but I will focus that talk on the trees from temperate regions, temperate and boreal regions, where the distinct 4-year seasons are. So that's important. That's one important thing. And I will talk as well about the broadleaf deciduous trees. That means the broadleaf trees that every year create new leaves, and they shed them every fall. To be clear, because then there can be some exceptions. So, well, let's go to the first question. What says to the trees that they should change their leaves with color and they should shed them? And why do they do it? Why do they have green leaves all year long? So, well, to answer one question, we can ask other questions. So I just want to summarize. What do the trees need to grow and maintain their leaves green and do photosynthesis? That means capture light by the green pigment and synthesize sugars and all other compounds that the tree is made of. So one of the most important factors or most important things is sunlight. Then it should be optimal temperature. What does it mean? It means not too hot and not too cold as well. Then, of course, trees need water and they need mineral nutrients from the soil. And well, we can ask how these 4 factors or 4 things change during the year, during our 4 seasons. So let's start from the end. Well, the content of mineral nutrients that tree takes up from the soil is more or less constant, the same during the year. Then, well, water, the precipitation, the rain changes and the level of water changes, but not as regularly. It can be different season from season. So mineral nutrients and water, well, they are not good signal to say the trees that the year is coming to end. Then it's temperature. Well, it's kind of better signal to say the trees, hey guys, be careful, it's getting too cold, so maybe it's not good to maintain the green leaves anymore. And maybe the most, or not maybe, surely the most regular and good signal to say the trees that autumn and winter is coming is sunlight, or exactly the day length. If we focus on the graphic that is which is on the lower side of the slide, you can see that well, in temperate regions, it's the example of England, that the day length changes from the January, starting on some maybe some 7 hours of light, and then the day length increase to 17 in the mid-June, and then the day shorten as well. And more or less this same pattern, you have it every year. It's because of the Earth is going around the sun, and because of the Earth axis is inclined. So this is some really reliable signal for the trees and other plants that the season is changing. So, well, the shortening day is the signal that triggers changes in the leaves that we can see as a color change, and after that the leaf shedding. Well, so we discussed not only the day length, but as well the temperature, because, well, the day length is really the good signal that doesn't or that is the same in more or less every year, but there are other factors of environment. That means conditions that can be different from season to season, but regularly it gets cooler during the autumn. So the decrease of temperatures in the autumn are the other signal for trees to start changes inside their leaves and well, prepare for leaf shedding. So well, on the other graphics, I just choose the date of September 18 because of that lower graphic, where you can see how the aspen leaf change colors from greenly, like good green leaf photosynthesizing in the mid-September, and then after mid-September it could change color and reacting to the signal of shortening day of more or less 13 or 20 hours. And then the temperature is the other signal that modulates or changes the rate at which occurs the change of color change, preparing for leaf shedding. So the first answer to our question, what triggers the trees to lose their leaves? That's the shortening day, as well the temperature. So short days and cooler temperature, it's the combination of signals to say trees or the other plants the autumn is coming. So we can say that trees know that autumn is coming, and they have their own watch and thermometer to be sure that it's not only well, some extreme or just random temperature drop maybe during the summer. So, well, I will leave the answer like that. Maybe during the question we can go more or deeper to the question what compounds or what character are the tree thermometers and watch. But day length and temperature are the main signals for trees that they should start the process of changing leaf color and get ready to shed the leaves. So let's go maybe well now, as far I was talking about the color change and the leaf shedding. However, maybe we can expand some scientific terms just to know if you meet that somewhere. That, well, in the right part of the slide, there's a whole year cycle, phenological cycle or life cycle of a deciduous tree. So if we start in the right lower corner, there's a green up, so the process where the broadleaf trees expand their leaves and get greener. Then during the summer, there's the phase of maturity, when the leaves are green and photosynthesizing. And the process that we are really interested in now is the process of change leaf color, then as well recycling nutrients that are stored in leaf. So the tree is really clever, so it doesn't waste the material that it stores in the leaves whole year. So what is possible to recycle? The tree recycle the nutrients and save them in the bark, stem or roots for the next year. And this process of color change, recycling nutrients and leaf shedding, we, the scientists, call it by the word senescence. So that's the third phase. And last but not least, to finish the cycle, during the winter, there's not enough sunlight and it's too cold for maintaining the leaves alive during the winter, because, for example, the water inside the leaves can freeze and damage the cells. So it's really good for the trees to sleep and save the energy during the winter when the conditions are not optimal for their growth. And we scientists call this phase dormancy, like tree rest. So in the lower part of the slide, you can see by the color frames all the phases, but gray or green up, maturity, senescence, and dormancy, with photographs of European hornbeam, English oak, and narrow-leaved ash, and the different phases of leaf expansion and leaf colors. Well, we can go to the second question: why and how do the leaves change color? So, well, I start with the graph on the right left side, I'm sorry. So the boxes correspond to the green pigment chlorophyll content during the 4 samplings during the year. So the first sampling is in May, the second in July, the third in September, and fourth in October. So we can follow the 3 phases: green up, maturity, senescence. And we can see that during the green up, obviously, the content of green pigment increases, it's stable during the maturity, and it decreases during the senescence. And it corresponds with the intensity of the green color of the leaves. And well, why is there that pattern every year, the dynamics? Well, trees use chlorophyll for capture light and use the solar energy to maintain their growth, to synthesize all the compounds they are made of. When enough sunlight during day sunlight hours during the spring and summer, then they maintain high content of chlorophyll and green leaves, so they capture light. And well, in the autumn, and it starts to be too cold and less sunlight, it's no worth to maintain green leaves, because the solar energy gets lower in sense of less sun hours and shorter day. So there's the danger of the leaves being damaged by low temperatures. So, well, and trees need a rest, as we do. So that's why for broadleaf deciduous is efficient and important to, well, take the dormancy, the rest during the winter. And we can now go deeper to the change of leaf color. So as I showed in the graphic, in the boxes in the previous slide, the content of green pigment chlorophyll decreases in the autumn. But inside the leaves, you find more pigments, it means color substances, than green chlorophyll. You can find there so-called carotenoids. There's the pigments that you can find as well, for example, in carrot root, in yellow and red peppers. So you can find those red and yellow or orange and yellow pigments in every green leaf, but it's almost invisible because the content of carotenoids is several-fold less than of chlorophyll, because the green pigment chlorophyll is really efficient for light capture, but the carotenoids are able to protect chlorophyll from damage from excess light. And well, in the autumn or in some plants, you can find in the cells of leaves more pigments, red or purple anthocyanins that absorb light as well and absorb UV radiation, so work as a UV filter as well. And well, so what happened in the autumn? What I said, that carotenoids, the yellow pigments that creates the yellow color of autumn leaves, they are present in the leaves all year long, but they are too low content, so they are almost invisible, masked or covered by high contents of chlorophyll. If you focus on the 2 graphics below, in the middle of the slide, on the right side, there's chlorophyll content from May to October in 5 broadleaf trees: European beech, sycamore maple, Norway maple, mountain ash, and silver birch. And you can see that the content of chlorophyll is almost 10 times or 8 times higher than of carotenoids. So, but it changes in the autumn. For example, in lower part of the slide, I have mentioned that in beech leaves, you can find only 1 microgram per centimeter of leaf area of chlorophyll, but 6-fold more carotenoids, which is the reason why you can see the yellow and not the green. But in the middle of the season, it's vice versa. You have 10 times or 6 times more chlorophyll than carotenoids. So the change of leaf color is due to change of the particularly of the chlorophyll, green chlorophyll pigment content. So this is the same information, but maybe in more simple way. So on the left side, you have the mature or so-called pre-senescent leaf, which absorbs light, use the solar energy for photosynthesis, and it's with high chlorophyll content and low content of carotenoids. Then, if you go to the right side of the graphic, the chlorophyll decays in the autumn, but the carotenoids stay, so they become more visible. And in some plants, like maples or, well, maybe cherries or other trees, apart from the carotenoids, they start to accumulate those purple pigments, anthocyanins, that as well work as a protection, and the leaves become purple or red. So, do I have more time to go more to the detail, to the leaf, yeah? Or just...
Yes, a few more minutes, yes, for sure.
Okay. So if we can ask, where do the trees store chlorophyll and all other pigments in their leaves? So here I have the cross section of the leaf. The blue picture or blue image, it's taken under the microscope. So you can see that the leaf is more or less 1 millimeter thick, and the blue color, it's an artificial color for microscopic preparation. Well, on the right side, you have the simplified drawing of the leaf. So we can find chlorophyll in so-called chloroplasts, the small bodies inside the cell, inside the leaves. But not only chlorophyll, but as well the yellow carotenoid pigments. So it's important to know that the green pigment, it's not randomly dissolved in the leaf, but it's only in the inner cells and in the small bodies, organelles, chloroplasts inside the leaf. And well, not only amount of chlorophyll is changing during the senescence, but as well the structure of chloroplast of those bodies. On the left side, you can see that during the summer or maturity, they have nice or they have inner membranes stacked together and some starch grains like storage compounds. But to the autumn, they change their not only color, decaying chlorophyll, but as well structure. Maybe it's too detailed, but we can have a look where we find I'm sorry, yes, chlorophyll and carotenoids in the cells. So here is the sequence of maple leaves changing colors from green through yellow to yellow, orange, and purple. And you can see the cross section of the leaf. So every time we look inside the leaf, so we can really check that the green color, that means chloroplasts, they are only inside the cells in the leaf interior. And you can as well confirm what I said before, that in the chloroplast there are both pigments, chlorophylls and carotenoids, like on the first or C image, the yellow and green color in the small bodies inside the cells, and then that the green pigment decays. That means that it breaks down and it's not present anymore, and then you can see only the yellow color of the carotenoids. And after all, in maple and cherry and other species, but it's not general for all trees, the purple pigments, anthocyanins, can accumulate in the other part of the cell, in the vacuoles. So that means that well, that the leaf becomes purple and red. So you can see it from the outside, but now you can see it from the inside as well. And well, so now imagine that once the color is changed from green to yellow or orange, the leaves are ready to fall off, because there are not any more chlorophyll pigment that can capture light and change the solar energy to the chemical energy, and the nutrients are as well recycled and stored in the roots or somewhere else. So how the trees shed their leaf, how they do it that the leaves come off? So, well, the scientists have other nice word to such a simple thing like shedding leaves, and it's called abscission. And well, why I use this complicated word from Latin? Because I would like to use it to explain exactly how the leaf come off. So, well, the parts of the leaf are the blade, which is the flat part adapted to the light capture, and then a petiole that connects the leaf blade to the stem. And here at the base of the petiole, the structure of the cells changes and creates so-called abscission zone. That means really the place where the petiole and the whole leaf detach from the stem and fall off. Normally, during the maturity phase or during the summer, the leaves have to be tightly connected to the stem. They have to resist the wind and rain and wind, and the leaves have to be really tightly and elastically connected to the stem. But once you want the leaf to fall, then something has to be changed. And well, here on the right side, you can see the microscopic image, well, the section of branch. So here is the bud on the right, upper right side, it's the bud, and below the bud, it's base of the petiole and the petiole of the leaf. And what is highlighted is that so-called abscission zone, the base of the petiole. And it's important that during the fall, the cell wall structure changes. The walls become more fragile, and the elastic compounds like pectins are degraded or eaten by specific enzymes. So only the fragile part stays, and the petiole loses tight connection with the stem, and then the leaf falls off. So the process is the combination of changing the structure, cellular structure and the base of the petiole to be able to shed the leaf. So now, well, or maybe later during the November, all chlorophyll is broken, the leaves are yellow, all nutrients are recycled, so the leaf is ready to fall with its abscission zone. So now when the wind comes, then it's not connected tightly and elastically to the stem anymore, and the leaf falls off, or it just falls off by its own mass, by the gravity. So, well, to conclude it simply and answer our two questions. So, well, what triggers trees to lose their leaves? Is the day length change, shortening days, as well the temperature, it's getting cooler. So that's the signal to start the changes inside the leaves, to change the color and shed the leaf. So why and how to do it? Well, during the winter, there's not enough sunlight or not enough sunlight hours to capture light and use it. So the green chlorophyll pigment that is responsible for that decays, and the yellow carotenoids become visible. And well, during the winter, it's too cold for maintaining the leaves alive. So trees need a rest. So shed your leaves and go to sleep. So I think that's all from me today. So I hope it was understandable. And in any case, I'm open and happy for your questions. So thank you very much for your attention. And well, we can have a discussion.
Zuzana, thank you very much for showing us this fascinating inner world or inner life of trees. It was very interesting. And yes, please, I also encourage you to ask questions. If you don't want to talk, you can also write to chat. Okay. Well, there will be also time for the discussion at the end. So one last moment. Okay. We have some comments that it was fascinating to find out why the trees lose their leaves from durian. Thank you. And yeah, also greetings from other participants, and thanks. Okay, it seems there are no questions. So Zuzana, thanks a lot, very much. Thanks a lot once more. And I would give word to Brian Campbell and his presentation about observing the trees from Earth. Yes?
There's some I see there's some question from
Yes. Now there's one more. So
how can carotenoids protect chlorophyll against light excess? Well, those pigments, carotenoids, they are able to capture light and change it like light energy to heat. But chlorophyll is not able to do it. So if there's too much light, then carotenoids work as a fuse, and they change the light energy to heat. So, well, the leaf can get warmer. However, the highlight doesn't damage the chlorophyll molecule. So maybe it's a little bit simplified, but the mechanism is that carotenoids are not able to change the solar energy to chemical energy, but they can change it to heat, and that's the mechanism of protection.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any more questions. So yes, let's move now from the inside of trees to the ground observations. I can see one more question from Marcus. So I don't know if you, Zuzana, want to quickly answer that, or we will leave it.
Yeah. Are there carotenoids present all year round? Yes, they are. I think that if there is a recording, then you can check one of the slides of the presentation when I show, or maybe I don't know whether I'm sharing the screen, so we can just quickly go back, where those two graphics show that carotenoids, the right part, are present all year round, but in lower amount than chlorophylls. That's why they are not seen.
Yeah, okay. We have one more question or comment that in Malta leaves do not get the lovely rust colors, but just turn brown. Why is that? So please, I will. This will be the last question for now. So we need to get to the next presentation. So please, let's talk about this and leave the other discussion for the end of the webinar.
Okay, sure. So should I answer this question? Or?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, that's my hypothesis. Well, I suppose that like Malta is more southern latitude than Czech Republic, or well, so that there come other environmental factors to play. For example, the lack of precipitation, the drought during the end of the summer. So maybe the process of leaf changing color or senescence, it's quicker. So then the recycling of nutrients, it's really fast. And the decay of yellow pigments comes really in quickly behind the decay of green pigments. So the leaves change from the green directly to dry brown, because it's all quicker. It could be one reason, and the drought, like lack of water, could be the other, then makes all the process more quickly.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm very happy for having such an interest in this topic and for having all the questions. And please, if you have any more ideas, any more questions in your mind, write them in chat or keep them, and we can really come back to the discussion later on before the webinar ends. Thank you, Zuzana.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice webinar. I will follow as well.
Thank you. And please, Brian, can you take your word?
Yeah, I'm going to go and share my screen.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, great presentation, Zuzana. That was a lot of great information, and I need to look back at all of it. It was a lot of stuff a lot of stuff I didn't know, so I'm going to definitely go back and take a look at all that with the recording. But thank you to the European Phenology Campaign with Lenka, Bara, and Donna for allowing our campaign, some folks from our campaign, to present, because our Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign has a great collaboration with the European Phenology Campaign, because we look at trees, we look at land cover, we look at all these things where there's so many interactions and overlapping data points and data collection ideas that are really perfect for this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about field observations, the importance of taking green down observations and tree height observations at the same time and location. Before I do that, I want to quickly mention this, like Lenka mentioned earlier. Our Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign is having our next webinar, and it's next Tuesday at 9 a.m. That's our time, so it would be 3 p.m. Central European time or 1 p.m. UTC. And the featured speakers are folks from the European Phenology Campaign, and there are some schools, students, and educators presenting from the European Phenology Campaign. So I want to invite everyone to that. Please just send me an email if you like. Just send me an email to brian.a.campbell, as you can see on the bottom, at nasa.gov, and we'll get you set up and we'll give you the information for that. But feel free to come out and listen to that. We're right now in the science phase of year 3 of the campaign. So we're focusing on the science related to the observations and measurements as part of the campaign. So here quickly, I always like to show this during all my presentations. This is our team for trees around the globe. We have folks in different locations. I'm based at the NASA Wildlife Flight Facility in Virginia in the United States. Dorian Chaney, who is on today, she's at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. Peder Nelson, who will be talking to you following my presentation, is the campaign co-lead and online tool and data expert. He's from Oregon State University. He is a researcher and professor at Oregon State University. We have Dr. Christopher Schumann, is a subject matter expert, and Peter Falcon, who many of you probably know from the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he is also a Globe partner. All right, so a little bit about tree height, just to start off here. Tree height, and this is my favorite fact about tree height. Tree height is the most widely used indicator of an ecosystem's ability to grow trees. Tree height is an important ecological trait, as the competition for sunlight determines which trees flourish and which trees become suppressed and eventually die out. Tree height affects the ecological role of super canopy species, i.e. the largest of these species around the planet, of trees, and the vertical structure of forests and the relationship to how an ecosystem works. And tree height is super important to researchers around the world because it helps us understand the idea and science of biomass. Basically, how much carbon trees and forests are pulling in from our atmosphere and also storing. Okay, about green down. Green down is a monitor of the length of the growing season and the changes in the timing of leaf color and leaf fall. Super important because it's an indicator of all these things. Green down can serve as another indicator of this relationship between tree and leaf color. You know, it's all dependent upon the different species of trees, the genus of trees. All these different species of trees react differently in our environment depending upon where they're located. You know, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, the boreal forest versus, you know, around the equator. So all of these things now, but green down is such a huge indicator of this. And also, green down observations, and this is a larger picture aspect, can help identify how and why tree species are being affected by changing climate factors. And I'll get to that in a second. So just a couple facts about, you know, looking at tree height and green down, since that's what we're talking about, you know, taking the observations of tree height and green down at the same time in the same location and why it's important. So here we have 2 campaigns. We have the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign, where we focus on tree height, but also we want people to take observations of land cover and greenings and carbon cycle and any other globe protocol measurements that they think are important, whether it be surface temperature or air temperature or soil moisture or soil characterization. All of these different things affect and show how our planet Earth functions as a system. And then we have the European Phenology Campaign, which focuses on the greenings, the green up, okay, in the springtime, the green down in the fall, and how the carbon cycle ties all that together. When we bring these 2 campaigns together, the data coming from these 2 campaigns can really help us focus on local environments, how they contribute to all of us understanding the bigger picture. So what we're asking you to do and why it's important to take measurements at the same location at the same time. When you take a tree height measurement or observation, go ahead and take a greenings, depending upon what season you're in, okay? I highlighted green down because that's the season we are in the Northern Hemisphere. I know there's some folks, you know, I think on this call, I'm not sure, on this webinar, who are, you know, basically in the springtime, so they're in the green up phase. So whatever season you're in, take these observations. And when you do this seasonally, year after year, whether it be with your, you know, your students the following year, you know, taking over from where the students from the previous year took observations, you can look at this change over time. At NASA, we do a lot of that. We look at satellite data and ground-based data, and we use that data to look at change over time, how things are changing, how our planet's responding to our changing climate. We do this all the time. We do it, synoptically from space, we do it on the ground, and we like combining all this to give a much more robust data set for research, for students, and for professional researchers as well. So we're asking you to do this because one thing I like to showcase here is these green up, green down measurements help scientists validate their satellite estimates of the beginning and end of plant growing season. As you've probably seen throughout the planet, growing seasons don't remain the same year after year. Sometimes they're a few days different. Sometimes they're a few months different. One thing that I like to mention is that last year in Maryland, where the climate's pretty temperate, in February, okay, super cold part of the year, we actually saw down the road from where we live, they were actually growing sod. Sod, basically, they're growing, grass layers that people can, that then gets basically harvested and then put in people's yards to make their yards look better, or if they have dying grass to regrow grass in their yard. But this was in February, so these irrigators that water the entire sod field were running in February. I have never seen that. I've lived on the East Coast of the United States I'm 46 years old. I've lived my entire life on the East Coast, and I have never seen irrigators out in February. And that's primarily the farmers are realizing our climate is changing. Well, they know this, but they're taking advantage of it. They're starting earlier in the season to do this. So we see this change happening all the time. So green up and green down measurements help the scientists validate the satellite estimates of when these plant growing seasons begin in a particular location and when they end in a particular location. Because by looking at how these trees are interacting with the environment, these trees serve as these indicators to how, to the beginning and the end of these plant growing seasons. When we are seeing the leaves falling off trees during green down earlier in the season, we know things are changing. And looking at this and observing this and documenting this, in your research with students and also in the GLOBE database, we can really help everyone understand. So the bottom line here is taking observations of tree height and green down at the same time and location allows for a more comprehensive scientific knowledge of your local environment and how the Earth functions as a system. Knowing the tree height at the time of green down helps us understand how it's possible to see a change in the rate of tree growth when you do this the same time, as I mentioned earlier, same time each year. And there are climate factors involved, of course, things like an unusually warm autumn, accelerated frost events, meaning frost is happening more often. It's happening earlier in the season, could be happening later in the season. All these changes here can be seen by looking at trees, looking at leaves, leaf color, leaf fall, okay? So all of these things can affect the structure and function of terrestrial ecosystems. They inhibit plant growth, they can reduce carbon uptake, and can disturb nutrient cycling, which is also vital for tree growth. And we can see that by how a tree is growing. If the growth is stunted, if it's getting growing faster, than it's supposed to as a species. We need to look at all these different things. So, with all that said, just want to quickly go over. There's several ways to measure tree height with GLOBE. There's the handheld clinometer method. Okay, it's just one that you can find on the site. We have some YouTube videos here to do it. There's a URL down here. It's a quick URL. It's actually a bit.ly URL. You can go in and watch the video. My son and I actually went and built a handheld clinometer, and then we went out and took observations. I showed him how to use a clinometer by looking at a crepe myrtle tree in our yard. And you can also use the NASA Globe Observer Citizen Science app, the Trees tool, to use a built-in magnetometer to look at the top of the tree and the bottom of the tree. And then you walk to the base of the tree, and then you can figure out how tall that tree is. And doing that seasonally for the same tree is super important because it goes back to showing how tree height can serve as an indicator for lots of these things that I've talked about today. And finally, how does NASA observe tree height in gradings? And this will lead us into Peder's presentation. So we have a couple missions here at NASA. One's called ICESat-2, the Ice Cloud and Land Elevation Satellite 2. It's in space now. It's been in space for about 2 years, just over 2 years, and it uses an onboard laser altimeter system, or LiDAR, lasers, to bounce photons off the planet and return back to the satellite, measuring the height of things on Earth, like sea ice and ice sheets and glaciers and bodies of water, sea surface height, landforms, and specifically in our case, tree and tree canopy height. We also have an instrument on the International Space Station called JEDI, the Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation Instrument. And this also uses LiDAR, uses lasers to measure the canopy height across basically, mostly the mid-latitudes, okay, because of the orbit of the International Space Station. But why I mention this is that because when you're taking these observations in the same place and same location, remember, there's instruments up above you that are taking these observations as well. So you can compare the data you get on the ground at these locations with what we're getting from space. So comparing the ground-based and space-based data is vital to understanding the measurement accuracy. It allows for student and professional researchers to build their own research using a robust data set and understand how trees are affected by our changing climate. So online tools will help with this. And if I may, Lenka, I will pass it on to Peter. So take it away, Peter, and I will stop sharing. And I can answer some questions in the chat if there are any, and then at the end.
Sure. Thank you very much, Brian. And Peter, please go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. At least it is over here in the west coast of the United States. I want to highlight and actually show you some of the satellite data that Brian was just talking about, because that's the way that I look at Earth. I spend a lot of time not only going into forests like what you see behind me, that's the type of forest that we have in Oregon, but also I like to look at what's happening on Earth from space. And so tracking this greenness, this vegetation, is a really important part. And so I want to first highlight that GLOBE has been helping everybody understand the seasonal vegetation. And so there are some nice lessons that are available to help you understand what I'm going to show you in a little bit more depth. Because there's a couple little key words and some little jargon that you might come across. Scientists, we like to do things like this. And so I want to highlight that we've been talking a lot about photosynthesis. And so when we talk about how NASA or how the European Space Agency or how we measure these from space, what we want to talk about and think about is that photosynthesis. How is all of the light that's coming from the sun interacting with the surface of the Earth? And we saw a great demonstration of how at the leaf level this is happening. But what happens when we start stepping back and not looking at the individual leaf, but the larger area? And this is where what we need to actually measure is the red light. How much red light is getting absorbed by that leaf during photosynthesis? And then we also can make a measurement in something that our eye cannot see. And this is the near infrared light. And what we know is that plants actually reflect this really a lot to protect themselves. And so as scientists, we can actually use this difference between how much red light is absorbed and how much near infrared light is reflected. And we can come up with a measurement of photosynthesis, an estimate of how much photosynthesis is there. And you'll see this term NDVI, Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. That's what I'm talking about. It is really just a measurement of photosynthesis, or an estimate of photosynthesis that we're making based off of reflected light and absorbed light. So it's a really cool thing, because as you start looking at just the red light, how much red light is being absorbed, and it relates to the amount of leaf that is there. So I want to highlight this because this will allow you to get a little bit deeper into some of these concepts. The other thing that I'll highlight that will help you as you explore this data yourself is these data literacy cubes that Globe has developed, and My NASA Data has worked with them to help us to have some questions as we go through this. As a scientist, I've spent many years developing these and internalizing these questions, but you might need a guide to help you walk through and understand those. I like them because they have, you can actually make them, you can roll them, and you can start asking questions. Examining the map. What do you see? Where are you actually looking at on Earth? What patterns might you see? So, you know, this is what a lot of us scientists spend a lot of time doing is, oh, it looks like I lost my screen share. Let me pull that back up for you. And what I like to do is go and start looking at Earth from space like this. So this website that I'm showing you right now is NASA's Worldview. And Brian, you can probably drop that link into the chat for everybody to be able to find. But this is a really nice tool that NASA has put together that pulls hundreds of data sets into one location. And so with this, we want to add some layers. And what I first did is you can search for vegetation. And when you do that, you can see that there's a lot of different options. And so this is where it's useful to read the information that goes along with these different data sets, because they are measured or averaged across 8 days, 16 days, or a month. And the reason why I mention that is because of this right here. Here we're looking at Europe today, the image that was just collected recently, and there's lots of clouds. And so this is one of our challenges that we have looking at and tracking vegetation from space is we can't always see it. And so that is another reason why we need observations on the ground underneath these clouds so that we can see what is happening in between these satellite observations. But as a result that we can't always see through Earth or through the clouds like that, we actually have to come in here, and I like to select, you can choose the 8-day rolling average here. And the neat thing about that is that if there's a cloud, if there's cloud, 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 every day for 5 days straight, but they have one observation where you can see through the clouds on, say, day 6, that's the measurement that is used in this 8-day average. And so it's important to understand the challenge of trying to measure this from space. And so you can go through and you can see a lot of different ways that these are averaged together, both in time, but also in the size on the ground that we're talking about. And that does show you different patterns. And so one thing that you can see, since right now we're in the middle of this 8-day period, we don't have any vegetation. You know, we don't have that measurement yet. So what I can actually do is along the bottom here, you see a time slider bar. And that's really useful because it allows you to go back for about 20 years and you can roll back and actually just go back a day in this case. And now here is our vegetation. How green is the area that you're actually interested in? So, you know, stepping back at a global perspective here, we start to see areas that are brown and areas that are dark green. And these patterns are really interesting at this scale, at the big global scale like this. But importantly, you can start zooming in and you can actually start looking at an area that you know something about. Now, I am not as familiar with Europe in this case, but I have a couple of landmarks that I usually key in on. And importantly, I like to always focus in on the Alps, on the mountain ranges here, because we tend to have phenology green changes happening at high elevations or high latitudes, and then changing or not changing as fast at lower latitudes or lower elevation. So it's important to really think about where you are in the world and in relation to that green piece that you're looking at. But you can zoom in and you can, what I want you to start noticing here is that at a certain place, I start getting these square boxes. And these are the pixels. These are the picture elements that is the highest resolution that we can see. And it's important because here we are looking at a pixel, an area on the ground that is about a 1 kilometer area. And so we're not seeing those individual tree leaves anymore. We're seeing all of the vegetation that's photosynthesizing here, whether it be a tree or whether it be grass. And I want to highlight that you can actually roll your mouse over the different areas here, and you'll see that on the legend on the left side there, the numbers move. And so when I'm up in the mountain area where it's rock and there's not any vegetation, I have a value of 0. But if I go down into the forested area, I have a value of 0.78. Okay, again, you'll want to learn a little bit more about what these numbers actually mean. But the key is we have numbers. And so we can actually track this over time. And so if I just, you know, look at an area, I can see that this location is at about 0.5. Now, again, these numbers don't really have any meaning unless you have ground data, right? And so, but the nice thing is I can now go back in time over months, and I can actually go back to, say, August. And you should see a change in vegetation around the mountainous areas here, right? Here, I'll just go forward a little bit, and you can start to see, there we see the vegetation change. Notice the green. Look at that. Wow. We go from really green to brown. And these patterns are telling us the vegetation that is going through green down right now. And so you can go through and you can actually time travel. You can not only focus on this year, but you can go back in time and what was it like last year? And you can make those comparisons. Again, you can get the numbers so you can put those on a graph and you can actually track the magnitude or how big are these changes happening. And so you have the numbers, but you also have these images. And so you can actually download the data here, and you can actually use this little tool, and you can take a snapshot of the area that you're studying. And so you can download that in a couple different formats of pictures, or as a file that you can bring into a Google Earth or into a mapping package or a software package like that. So this data, this greening data, is available to you. And we, here where I'm sitting in the United States, I can look at a map like this and I can understand some patterns based off of the forests and the model of the world that I have. But what it actually looks like there, that's where we need everybody's help. We need those pictures on the ground. We need that data on the ground to help us to track and to understand this view of Earth and how it's changing. The final thing I'll mention, because this to me is one of the parts of phenology that's really neat, is watching it change over time. And so here you can actually make your own animation. You can make your own movie to show the changing over of greenness over a season or over many years. And so, you know, I'll leave this up to you. I won't demonstrate it right now. It's very straightforward to do. Pick your time period that you want to look at, set it in, and then actually, you know, create your animation. You can save that, you can share it with us, use that in your presentations to understand and to come up with some good questions. Why are you seeing the patterns that you are? And so that's, to me, this is one of these really exciting tools that until you start looking at it for your particular area, you may think that NASA has it all figured out or the European Space Agency has it all figured out. But we don't understand all of these little nuances in local areas that you guys are seeing and the changes and why they're changing in the manner that they are. I'll end with something that happened recently that was unexpected in Oregon. We had some wildfires happen, and so my sky has been filled with smoke. And one of the things that happened as a result of that is our trees actually started changing colors earlier than they had before, the week before. And so that light was, the sunlight was blocked. And so I was out there. I took ground observations of the sky. I took colors observations of my trees, and I've been tracking how the smoke has affected the trees. And so I see curled leaves actually from that smoke event. I also see a lot of yellow leaves that last year when I took the pictures, they were green. And so I'm able to actually track this really unexpected event because I had some previous data. And so, you know, we never know when these things are going to change or the magnitude of these changes. So, you know, that's where we need the satellite data, but we also need this ground data to make sense out of it all. So I look forward to seeing what you guys can come up with in terms of animations or data with this. So thanks for letting me share this with you all.
Thank you very much, Peter, and also to you, Brian, for helping us to understand the importance of ground observation, of greening observation, and also for showing us this great tool that allows us to look at actually the area that we in the school observe. So we really now can have two different views of the area. So thanks a lot for that. And yeah, I really encourage everyone to ask questions now if you feel like. Also, if there are more questions to Zuzana, please feel free to ask now. Okay, we have one more question from Marcus to Zuzana about anthocyanins in some plants present all year long, or if anthocyanins are present in some plants all year long, or can accumulate after. So stress that normally get red leaves, no stress. Had these anthocyanins already in summer in their leaves? So we should see them if we analyze the. Zuzana, you are muted.
Okay, thank you for the question. Very broad questions. So generally, the answer is yes, maybe for all the questions. Let's go one after another. In some plants, the anthocyanins are present all year long. For example, if you have the red cultivars of beech or maple, you can see them usually in botanical gardens or, I don't know, castle gardens. Those pigments are present all year long. And you can, in the spring, you can see them, like the leaves are red, then they become dark green. So they are both pigments, anthocyanins and chlorophylls as well. And then you can see the red color in the autumn when the chlorophyll decay. So in some plants, those purple pigments, they are all year long. And in some other plants, or generally in more or less all plants, anthocyanins can be accumulated after some stress events, particularly
I'm afraid we lost Zuzana.
Zuzana is there, but we cannot hear her.
Yes.
Okay, let's wait for a second.
In the meantime, before she joins again or solves the problems with the speaker, you can find in the chat window some links to NASA World View tool, as well as invitation to Trees Around the Globe research campaign webinars. And there are also emails to the team of Trees Around the Globe campaign, to Brian, Peder, and Dorian. So please feel free to email them later on if you need or if you want to learn anything more about this topic.
I have a question for Peder or for Brian. What are the limits or limitations of using the satellite data when it comes to the greenings or to the trees? Is there something that you would like to mention, or is it has it actually changed over the time? Like, for example, 20 years back there were some other limitations that we have today. Is there any progress in that? Thank you.
Well, that's a great question, Bara. I'll take that, Brian, to start off with. Yes, Bara. So I was talking about that time piece and having to see through clouds. Clouds are the primary challenge that we have for monitoring or measuring vegetation on Earth. If there's clouds there, we can't see what's happening underneath them. And that is a problem that we haven't really gotten over. It's just a fundamental problem with trying to use visible light to make these measurements. But so what we've done is we've learned, and we've put up more satellites so that we can maybe try to get through those clouds, since clouds may not be there the whole entire time of a day even. And so this you have to that being there at the right time to catch the green at the peak, and being there at the right time to catch the greening going away. That's the challenge. And so the strategy we've used is more satellites. And so instead of having to wait 16 days for a satellite to get back to a location, we now have 8 to 10 different satellites that are all orbiting, and one of them will pass over that area in maybe 2 or 3 days. And so through that, we've been able to get more cloud-free images, and we've been able to improve our ability to see the greening up, green down, the height of greenness. And but there's still that challenge right there of just being there at the right time. And each year is different, right? As you guys have experienced, if you're there October 1st, it doesn't mean that that's when phenology or senescence or green down is going to be happening. And so that's the added challenge of the science. And that's where that being consistent with your on-the-ground measurements helps you to actually see a pattern. If you're only out there every other day, in a random fashion, you may not be there to capture the phenomena of green up or green down that we're after. So that is really the big challenge. And so I'll actually highlight that and mention, because I think this is really important, that the European Space Agency has really led the way in this. And so I mention this because there's all of these really incredible tools coming from the Sentinel series of satellites. And so the European Space Agency actually has this really nice viewer that allows you to go in and start looking at some of these more higher resolution satellites and some of the different satellites that are out there, rather than just the one that I showed you in our other viewer earlier. And so I just want to, give a hats off to everybody who's in the European Union, who's contributed and helped to make the Sentinel series of satellites possible. And you guys have the opportunity to actually really use that data because of where it's coming from and the intended audiences. And so they've really learned a lot from all the efforts over the last 40 years of trying to just identify where vegetation is on Earth. So my long-winded answer that, yeah, this is an ongoing challenge, and it's been the challenge from the beginning of monitoring Earth from space.
Thank you. So it's still the clouds.
Thank you. I saw Zuzana is back, so I don't know if Zuzana, you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry for losing the connection during answering Marcus' question. So I don't know how far you have heard something or when I was cut off.
Or perhaps you can type the answer to the chat.
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
one,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that people can find it out later. If yeah.
Okay, I think it will be the best way.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we have two more questions in chat. From one from Darko. I think it's to Peter or to Brian about. I think it's about visualization comparison between the multi-spec program and WorldView. So
yeah, I'll take that as well, since it kind of I was starting to type an answer to that question. Yeah, so this is one of the fun parts about satellite imagery. So what we have is when we make measurements, we are actually making measurements not only in the visible light, what our eyes see, so red, green, blue light, but satellites are able, and sensors are able to measure things that our eyes don't see. Near infrared light, shortwave infrared light, thermal energy. And so one of the things that you always need to look for when somebody presents satellite data to you is what are they showing you, and should it look like your eyes? Should it look like a normal true color image, as we call it? Or are they actually showing you things that our eyes can't see? And so they're making it what is called a false color image. A false color, and this is the power of computers, is we can pull together all these different views and visualize them in ways that don't make any sense to us. And so what normally should be green isn't green in an image all the time. And so that's where I really encourage everyone, be skeptical when somebody shows you an image. Ask questions. What do these colors mean, and why do they look like that? Because as you can see that we can actually go in and we can select some different types of imagery that allow us to not only see, surface reflectance and what's actually happening, but we can do things like this layer inside of here, which now turns snow a blue color, a cyan color, because we're actually visualizing light that is reflected or changes in different ways. We're just visualizing something that our eyes can't see. And so this is a really good point, that always ask a scientist when they show you a map, what do those colors mean? Because then when we switch to something like what I was showing you, a vegetation index, here we're looking at numbers. We're just looking at the results of a math equation. And so I have to show it to you in some way. I could show you this as going from 0 being white to 1 being black, and then make a gray image, everything in between a gray image, or I can actually turn those into colors. And so, all of this is digital image manipulation. And so this is the remote sensing piece that if you want to learn a little bit more, come join us in some of our webinars and other things like that, where I will be highlighting how to manipulate these images, how to pull out the information like this, because it gets really complicated when you're presented something like this and you have to start making choices about what do you want to see and how do you want to see it. So that was a great question.
Thank you, Peter. And yeah, I really encourage everyone to join also the Trees Around the Globe campaign webinars to learn more about the topic of satellite vision of the Earth. And we have one more interesting question, this time related to the tree height. So I'm going to read it from the chat. Is tree height affected by wind and or by a sea spray? Trees locally in Malta don't tend to grow very tall unless they are in shaded areas behind high walls. It may be the lack of type of trees which normally are very tall after all. Not sure. We do not have so many trees.
I can take that. So let me answer that kind of in a twofold way. First, let's look at think about the technology. You know, one is, then I'll get to the specifics of the sea spray. But think about the technology. As Peter mentioned, you know, we have issues with clouds. You know, even the technology, we have such advanced technology to do this. You know, we're sending basically, you know, photons, light photons to the planet from satellites and instruments, okay? Things like sea spray and, you know, all these things like that, you know, sea spray can get in the way and cause the photons to reflect, refract, whatever. Therefore, we don't get a good observation of a tree that may be under this area where there's, you know, where the sea spray is affecting this. That's technology side. That's not an answer to your question specifically. But as far as does, you know, the sea spray affect tree height? Yes, it does. Think of it this way, you know, it affects the height of trees and basically vegetation in general, because there's variations depending upon where you are. And this question I see came from Malta. You're surrounded by salt water, okay? So you have sea spray coming from, you know, every direction depending upon how the wind goes. Yeah, it can be tree species specific, you know, just how much the salt, you know, how much the salt correlates to the decrease in the tree height growth. But when you have things like tree height, decrease in tree height, when you have stem height decrease, you can potentially have something called tissue death in the tree. It's because the trees are not able to adapt quick enough in their growing patterns to this basically influx of salt that deposits on these trees. Therefore, depending upon where you are, there's always going to be some type of variation in this deposition of salt on trees. And when you have this variation, the trees have to adapt quickly, okay? Which therefore, if they can't, their growth gets stunted, okay? And this, you know, depending upon how much it's stunted, it can be dependent upon the tree species as well. But then also this salt deposition and how the trees respond to this really, how can I say it, influences like a competition between how much tolerance of salt trees can maintain. So when you're in Malta, okay, and you're talking about having trees behind a wall that are growing, perhaps those walls, you know, serve as a barrier to receiving the majority of that sea spray, which you know, results in that salt deposition on the trees. So when you're talking about a tree that really wants to grow using you know, really, you know, fresh water, that type of thing, you know, in the soil, when you have this influx of this sea spray coming, it's really hard for these trees to adapt quick enough, you know, and grow in the normal way they should be growing, you know, based upon the species when you're having this salt deposition. You know, that takes me to something we see here, what's called the eastern shore of Maryland. It's basically, we live on the eastern shore between the Chesapeake Bay to our west and the Atlantic Ocean to our east. Okay, we're in this zone, this like buffer zone, but there are lots of how can I say vineyards, grape vineyards here, that the plants have become accustomed to the saline air, to salt deposition, and the wine that is grown in this area is very different from that is grown, you know, in the state of Virginia on the west side of the west side of the Chesapeake Bay, because they're used to basically, you know, freshwater precipitation. They don't get that saline air and deposit, so it's totally different. So over time, you know, hopefully the trees in areas like Malta and those, you know, those islands and peninsulas that are sitting next to, you know, the salt water with the saline air, you're going to see a big potential, you know, adaptation at some point. But what you're seeing there, you know, most likely in Malta is, yes, you're seeing the stunted growth from this salt deposition, with the inability of the trees to basically adapt quick enough to this sea spray and the salt deposition.
Thank you for explaining all this, Brian. And okay, maybe I see one more question in the chat. How important are measurements of trees near to the alpine environment? Is it more important the submountain or high altitude environment also important? Know that trees height in such altitude as 2,000 meters, at least above sea level, are scratched by the air. So,
I'll take that one, Brian, because
okay.
the Alpine area is actually a spot that is really interesting, and that's a spot here in Oregon where I have mountains that I'm also tracking. How high, where the highest elevation where trees grow is known as tree line. And that is something that tells us about the climate. How cold is it? And as well as sometimes how much light is there getting to that side of the mountain. But tracking tree line in high alpine areas really is an indicator of a changing climate. And so it is really important to focus on that alpine zone and to keep track of not only the height of those trees, but where they're occurring. Because we scientists in some places have actually noticed trees going up in elevation, tree line going up. And that's an indicator of a warming climate. And so that piece is a really, really important indicator of a changing climate. And so if you're able to get to those alpine areas, or even the subalpine areas, those areas are really rapidly changing and are a good indicator for what might be happening downstream and how much warmer a local environment might be getting with it. And so that's actually, I have focused on that as well in my area. And one thing you'll notice in alpine environments is wind. Wind is constant in alpine areas, and so a lot of the trees there may not actually look like a tree because the tops have been blown down, knocked over, and so if there's constant wind, like in coastal areas or alpine areas, the trees will actually bend and will try to adapt to that constant wind. And so it can actually tell you that the shape of those trees and how they're oriented can actually tell you a little bit about where the predominant winds are coming from. And you should expect to see these shrubby type of trees in an alpine environment because of all of that wind that is there. So that disturbance, the shape of the tree, is always an interesting piece to focus in on because it tells you so much about the local area and disturbances. That's another big piece that you do want to think about with trees like this.
Thank you, Brian. And Dorian comments that seeing big gnarled trees up at the top of alpine mountains is always so fascinating, and also up at the Grand Canyon. So I completely agree. It's always fascinating to go into the mountains and see the different shapes and even the fact that the trees are able to adapt to all the crazy, difficult type of climate. That's really fascinating. Well, unfortunately, the time is running really fast, and so I don't see any more questions now in chat. But if there are any more questions, please feel free to ask now, to write in chat or unmute yourselves and talk to us. And I will just leave a last minute, and if no questions gonna arise, we will unfortunately have to end today.